Logic Pro for iPad has just been updated to version 1.1 with a bunch of cool new features and improvements. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the 8 key changes and most important developments in Logic Pro for iPad. Hello, my name is Pete Johns. This is the Studio Live Today podcast, and I'm pretty gosh darn excited because this is the major Logic Pro for iPad update we have been waiting for. We've got a new sound pack, 32-bit recording is here, a brand new mastering assistant plugin, and a whole lot more. So why don't we dive in to all of these changes with number one? And that is the ability to record using 32-bit float as the bit depth. Now, what does that mean? Well, you might be aware that 16-bit and 24-bit are pretty common bit rates for things like your audio interfaces to record using. However, these days, a lot of more modern interfaces use 32-bit float. The advantage of this is that it actually gives you more dynamic range. It means you can record quieter and turn up your volume later in the mix, or you can record louder, and even if you get a little bit of clipping at the top end, you can pull the volume down and it's not going to be as much of a problem. So it helps you set the levels. Here in Logic Pro for iPad, what we can do is actually change that. Now, on the audio version, I'm going to explain this as best I can, but you can check out the video version of this over at YouTube, or just go to studiolivetoday.com for all the ways to keep up to date. What we're going to do is go up to the very top right corner and tap on this icon, the three dots, and then we're going to hit the settings button here and jump into our settings. Where we need to go to change this is under our app settings and under our recording, the third one down here. Your file type is either AIFF or WAV, hopefully, and the bit depth, which has previously only been able to go up to 24-bit, we can now set this to 32-bit float. Now, if you're not using a 32-bit audio interface, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference here, to be very honest. But if you do have a 32-bit compatible interface like mine, which is a Steinberg UR22C, then we can actually enable that. You might as well turn it on, because maybe in the future you are going to upgrade and you might as well have things set to the highest bit rate. But if you want to watch your file sizes and make sure that everything's fully compatible, you can leave that on 24-bit. Now, I've done a couple of test recordings and we'll be exploring this further in the future. But for the sake of this podcast this week and this video, I just wanted to let you know that it's available there. And then when you go to record, everything works exactly as it did before for recording your vocals and your guitars, except you're going to have a little bit more leeway when it comes to the noise floor and when it comes to clipping at the top end of your signal. Number two, we've got a new sound pack here in Logic Pro for iPad. I keep wanting to say GarageBand. I've been saying that for so many years. To get to this one here in Logic Pro for iPad, in the bottom left, tap on your browser button and then tap on Sound Library. You then select what's the hybrid textures sample alchemy pack, hit the get button, and that will download. Let's just hit the preview button so you can have a little listen to what some of these sounds actually sound like. Very cool stuff there. So I have another video if you want to check out in detail. I go into all of the different loops and samples and how to use them using the different options, because you can bring these in as either a sample alchemy, a quick sampler, or just the loops and sounds directly. And you can even use them in the Drum Machine Designer here in Logic Pro for iPad. So, hey, it's always good to have new sounds, and I'm not going to say I'm going to be using this one a heap, but there's some really nice textures in there, including a really cool organ interlude sound that I have to find a way to use in a future project. So check out the other video if you want to find out all about that, or if you're listening on the audio version, if you search Pete Johns Hybrid Textures, you're going to find the video and where I go through all of the details of that brand new sound pack. Before we jump into number three, if you're enjoying this, finding it interesting, make sure you hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're on the podcast version, make sure you're subscribed on your pod catcher of choice, and feel free to leave a rating on that same podcast service. Let's dive in. Number three, split view and stage manager. Hurrah! What does this mean? Well, previously we could only use slide over here with Logic Pro. Now we can use split view and stage manager, meaning we can have multiple windows open in a semi-permanent basis. How does this work? Well, here in Logic Pro, what we're going to do is tap on the three dots at the very top. This is where we can access the slide over and the split view. Now, I've shown in a previous video how to use slide over to bring files over into Logic Pro. But now, if I tap on the split view and then tap on the Files app here, it is going to bring up my Files app side by side with Logic Pro. I can then change the size of either of these windows by grabbing in the middle and sliding to the right or to the left to make my Logic Pro and my files as skinny or as fat as I want them to be. So the standard view that I'm using here is about a 75% for Logic Pro and 25% for my files, just down one side there. And that gives you easy ability to jump in here and start a new project in Logic Pro for iPad, and you actually get this adorable little thin version. Or if we move it across to halvies, we get almost like an iPhone sized version of Logic Pro. Could be fun. And as someone who creates short form videos as well, using portrait mode, yeah, expect to see some of those in your shorts. And now I can actually show the whole screen in a shorts video. It's actually going to be cool for me. But the main advantage of this is that now we can have these two things open at the same time and then be able to move files quickly and easily in and out of, well, into Logic Pro for iPad, either into the sampler, into Sample Alchemy, or directly into our project, which leads us nicely to our next topic, which is the ability to drag and drop multiple files. Can I get a hallelujah on this one? So when Logic Pro for iPad was released, one of the biggest limitations is that when we were dragging and dropping files from a folder into Logic Pro, you could only do it one at a time. So if you had a whole bunch of files, a whole bunch of samples, a whole bunch of loops, you wanted to bring them all in at once, you had to do it one by one. Thankfully, the new Logic Pro 1.1 allows us to select and drag and drop multiple files. Here's how it works. We're in the very convenient split view for those listening in on the audio version and not following along. What we're going to do is I'll show you first what we used to have to do. I've got 8 different stems here. So stems are just sort of split up files of a previous project. So this is a previous 8-bar challenge project that I did in GarageBand, and I want to bring all of these into this project. The way we used to have to do it was to tap and drag on an individual file, drop it into our project. Now, these are actually a different sample rate. I'm using 48 kilohertz in Logic Pro. These are 44.1 kilohertz, but you don't have to worry. You can either change your project or you can convert the file. I might actually change the project this time around, which means Logic Pro will now have changed it to a 44.1 kilohertz. It's actually also imported the tempo information, which is pretty darn cool. And there you go. It has set that file there ready to rock and roll and play with. But again, that is just the one file. What if we want to import all of these files at once? Well, now we can, thanks to the awesomeness that is multi-file drag and drop. So let's undo that. What I'm going to do now is tap in the top right corner and tap on the select button. What I can now do is select individual files if I wanted to just pick and choose which ones I want, or even more convenient, because I want every file in this folder, I'm going to tap on select all. That's going to select all 8 files. All I need to do now is tap and hold and drag all of these 8 files and drop them on one track. And look at the magic that's happening here. For the folks on the audio version, you just missed some magic. And that is that it grabbed these files and it has created 8 individual stereo audio tracks ready for me to start playing around with these stems. It's even put them in number order, which is pretty darn cool. So it is a great way to get everything in there. And now if we hit the play button on these tracks, it is playing all 8 tracks of this multi-track 8-stem project, which is really cool. It's going to make it super convenient if you're, say, using a different digital audio workstation. You've got someone using Logic, someone using Pro Tools, someone using FL Studio, and you want to collaborate. It's going to be so much easier to be able to stem out or export as WAV files or as individual files and then bring them over here into Logic Pro quick as you like. Moving on to number 5, and that is the Quick Sampler now has a record mode. Again, Big round of applause here. As it was previously, unlike in GarageBand even, where you can record your own samples, you could only use an external sample in the quick sampler. So we're going to dive into the sampler here and play around with this now. So what I want to do is I'm actually just going to cheat a little bit because I don't really have a sound to use here. I'm going to use one of these stems and throw it over into the project because I just want to show you how we can also use this in not just in the track, but to create a new track. So I've dragged that over. It's asked me whether I want Sample Alchemy Quick Sampler or Drum Machine Designer. I want the Quick Sampler, and that is going to sample that audio file that I've put in there and now be ready to play. What I'm going to do is get rid of the split mode first. By the way, I should have showed you this in the other version, but if you tap on the three dots at the top and just hit close, that's going to remove the split mode. And now we can come back to using just Logic Pro in full screen mode, which will make things easier to see and explore here. So we are in the sampler. We are going to tap on the plugins button here and then double tap on the quick sampler to bring up the sampler. Now, as it is, it's using this this entire track and it's created a pretty intricate looking sample here. Let's just see what it's done here and do it a quick play. Okay, very interesting stuff. It's sliced it up. It's used as automated slicer to slice up this bass loop into samples, which not really what we desired here. So we're going to tap on classic to turn it back to the classic mode. But in fact, we don't want to use this one. We actually want to record in our own sample. So the first thing I'm going to do is tap on that sample and I'm going to remove the current file. So we've got a blank sampler now. It just goes back to our default sound there, a little electric piano. And what we can do is record in our own sample. So to do that, up the top left of your sampler, of your quick sampler, there are different modes. There's classic, one-shot, slice, and the new recorder mode. We're going to tap on recorder. It now asks us to select a recording input, and it's a little tricky to see. To be honest, I'd love this to be a bit improved because it's still not really easy to see how you do this. But in the very bottom left corner, there is an input button there. Tap on that one and it'll have your inputs as they are. So I've got my Steinberg UR22C interface plugged in. If I was just using the iPad audio, it would just say iPad audio, which you can do. You can just record straight into your iPad. I'm going to select input 1 here. I've got a microphone, which I'm going to pick up and test. Check 1, 2, 3. And then there's a couple of ways to record here. There's a button down the bottom below, which is the record start option. You can either start immediately or wait for the signal to pass the threshold, which you can set here for the sampler. I personally like to just start immediately because we can then trim the sample to whatever we want. So I'd rather do that than perhaps miss the start of my sample. Let's sample me doing a bit of a scream here, shall we? So we'll hit the record button. I've done a weird noise there, and that has recorded that sound in. If we tap on one of the keys on the keyboard, there you go. I sound like a very sick cat. So what we can now do, though, is grab the handles here and set the points of input and output, or the start and the end would be the actual correct words to use, of this sample in our quick sampler. So we've done it on the start. We'll grab the end. Why is it not letting me grab that end one? There it goes. So we've now set that so we can actually use this. Sorry, I'm having too much fun now. So you can sample in whatever you can record. So if you've got like in fact, I'm going to do one more version here for you. I've got my bell here. So say I wanted to use my classic bell sound and get a real analog sound of this bell. I'm going to grab my microphone and we're going to do this one more time. So it's my sample.aaf there. I'm actually going to remove the current file and we're going to do this again. I'm going to hit recorder. I'm going to hit the record button. And I've hit my bell. And then I'm going to stop. So we'll turn that off. So now we can do the same sort of thing. So if I tap on the sample here, and this could actually create a pretty cool little kind of toy keyboard sound. So I'm going to once again grab the start and put it right up here next to the start of the sound so we can get it right on there. I'm going to grab the end because the end of this sound I started talking, which is not going to really work. And we'll move that one back. Still having a few difficulties with the keyboard. Unfortunately, the Magic Keyboard doesn't instantly move things as well as it should. So now I can create my own instrument with my bell sound. So how cool is that? A lot of fun to be had here with the quick sampler now that you can actually record in your own instruments. And to record it in, we just hit the record button, play it like any other instruments, and you are good to go. Number 6 now. There has been a major improvement to your ability to preview sounds quickly and efficiently here in Logic Pro for iPad. Let's show you what we mean. I'm going to tap on the browser button in the bottom left corner. I'm then going to go in to the loops section here, and I want to sample some bass sounds. So I'm just going to search the word bass and hit enter. I've got a bunch of different bass sounds here, and in the past what I'd have to do is tap each one to play it, pause it, tap another one, tap again to pause it. Guess what I can do now? If I tap on one of these over here on the far left and just drag down, I can quickly sample a bunch of different sounds at once. Let's show you what I mean. I'm going to tap on the east side chorus bass and then drag my finger down on all of these. So I can quickly go through, and then once I decide there's a bass sound that I wanted here, I kind of like this filthy drive bass, we can grab it, drag it over, and create ourselves a brand new track. We'll just use this as a sample alchemy track so that we can actually use this and then we can start playing that track. Or of course, you can just throw the loop directly onto your project. So really cool to be able to quickly sample those sounds when you're looking for exactly that right riser or exactly that right hi-hat sound in all of the loops, because we've got literally tens of thousands of them in there. It's a really handy and convenient way to preview your sounds before you bring them into your project. Number 7. Lessons. We've all got lessons to learn. If you don't learn enough from me on this channel, you can go and check out the lessons. It's fine, don't worry, I use them too. So to get to the lessons, all you need to do is tap and create a new project. And instead of hitting tracks or live loops, right below there, it has learn and explore. If we tap on the see all button there, you'll see here, if you're watching the video version or if you're listening on the audio, I'll just tell you that there's like 20 different lessons in here. They are guided lessons, they're hands-on, they're interactive, they're really cool. I've done them all except for the latest ones because they've just added in some brand new lessons for some of the new features, in particular the updated quick sampler and the intro to the mastering assistant. So if you want to use any of these, you can come in and click or tap on those, jump into the lesson, learn all about it with some hands-on learning, and then you'll be ready to rock and roll with that feature. Speaking of the mastering assistant, that may be our final thing. Getting a final master with your project that is radio ready, that is going to be at a good level and sound good compared to other songs. That's what mastering is all about. And Logic Pro for iPad now has their mastering assistant to automate this process for you. How do we get to it? How do we use it? If we go down to our mixer icon at the bottom of our project, you can see here, if we scroll across to the very far right and look for the stereo out track, there's a little icon there, a little magic wand and the word mastering. By tapping on that, we're going to actually enable the automated mastering. Now, what it's going to do is do an analysis. It's going to analyze the whole project to see where it might need to adjust and do some corrective EQ to our project. So why mastering? While that's doing that, why mastering? You've got your final mix. Shouldn't that be where you need it to be? Well, mastering just ensures that especially your levels are going to be loud enough to compete with other songs. When you're streaming on Spotify or Apple Music or other places, you don't want your song to be significantly quieter or significantly louder than others. Now, those platforms do some work to turn things up and down, but it's best to get it around the right level to start with. We'll talk more about that in just a jiffy. So that's been added now. Now, the other quick thing I wanted to let you know is you do need to be in setup mode to add this. So here in the mixer, if you hit the plus button, you're going to go to setup mode. And then at the top, if you hit the mixer icon, you're going to go back to mix mode. From here, we can tap on the mastering assistant. And here it is in all its glory. Now, I have a complete video outlining this in detail. That's linked in the description of the video here on YouTube, or if you search Pete John's Mastering Assistant on the YouTube, you're going to find it. But let's give you a quick overview here. So we can adjust the character. It starts as transparent. We can make that clean, valve, or punch. We've got the auto EQ here. So what this actually does is it determines what EQ, what corrective EQ should be added here. Now, if you don't love that, don't stress. All you need to do is grab the auto EQ and drop it down to 0, and it does nothing. Or if you love what it's doing and you want it to do more, you can drag it up to anything up to 200%. So you've got control over how much corrective EQ is actually being applied. You can even customize where the EQ is set. So the custom EQ button is on. You can tap on the EQ points and move your bass, your mids, and your treble. You've got dynamic, so that's the loudness. You've actually got your LUFS meter included here with your loudness. Now, what this does, this is basically a limiter. This is to try and get your loudness to minus 14 LUFS, which stands for loudness units full scale. In this case, integrated is the important one we want. So the I there will be at that minus 14 or around about if we have the loudness set to the middle. You can turn it up if you want to really push it, but you might end up with it too loud, or you can pull it down if you want to. And what Logic actually does is it makes your final master at -1. So it limits it up to -1, which some people have said to me, can I have minus 0.1 or minus 0.2? There doesn't seem to be a way to do that yet. But maybe we'll explore that in the future. You can maybe add a gain plugin just after it and just gain it up a little bit. We'll see. And finally, you've got stereo spread. So you can have everything from mono right over on the right side, everything over to massively stereo. But beware with that because you could get some phasing issues there. There's also an excite button here to add a little bit of an exciter, some mid to high frequency analog goodness there. The final buttons we have here is the bypass. So you can turn off and on, and loudness compensation, which is pretty important because when you're mastering, if it's just louder, it's just by default, it's going to sound a bit better. Generally is the case. So loudness compensation will kind of adjust the volume automatically so that when you're listening, you're comparing apples with apples. So let's turn loudness compensation on. Let's turn on the bypass. Let's hit play on this project and see what this mastering is doing. There's our final mix. There's the mastered version. So you can hear that it really is just sort of pushing a little bit. And if we turn that loudness compensation off, ready for it? So it's bringing the song up to a level that we would consider radio ready, so it can be competitive with other tracks when we're playing it on other platforms. Now there's a heap more that has been added, changed, fixed, improved. There's like pages and pages of it, and if you want to check all that out, I've got the release notes linked down in the description. I've also got links to all of my tutorial videos, including the Mastering Assistant, including the new sound pack, and my overview of all the new features of Logic Pro for iPad 1.1. What do you think? Is this enough to get you using Logic Pro for iPad as your daily driver, as your digital audio workstation of choice? For me, it's doing some pretty good things. I got to admit, I've been waiting for this. The 1.0 version had its faults. It was a great thing, and we saw the potential. I think now with these updates and changes and improvements, Logic Pro for iPad is really taking steps towards being that go-to mobile digital audio workstation. Thank you for watching or listening to this one. Don't forget, if you're watching the video version, hitting the thumbs up button helps. Leave your comments and questions and feedback down in the comments section of that video. Make sure you're subscribed so that you're up to date with all the videos that come out here basically every day. There's a very rarely a day where we don't have a video here on Studio Live today. Listening on the audio version, thank you again. Please feel free to subscribe using your podcatcher of choice, and leaving a review or a rating really helps out. That is going to do it for this one. I wanted to say, as we do at the end of each and every show, video, podcast around here, please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, keep creating, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Live today.